Let's talk about operationalizing all of this, engaging with the client. David, talk about creating the expectation in the client's mind and the client's eye that these are the types of services and conversations that they should be having with their advisor. How do you do that?
Phil, it's all about making a commitment to the client. And as we make a commitment to the client and to their family, it's about meeting their expectations and understanding that whether it's their current situation, their goals, what's in their future, their feelings and emotions, or their family or business dynamic, being there when those changes will occur. And turning that into action is making a commitment that each and every time Phil and Susan and I meet, we make sure that we talk about what is a priority to them and to their family. And then when we meet the next quarter, the next semi-annual, or the next year, we always want to make sure we come back to point to make sure that we're talking about what Phil and Susan want us to talk about, not what I want to talk about or my firm. So really understanding being there when those changes will occur. I don't ever want to hear an advisor say, well, when your situation will change, Phil, let us know. I want to be there when those situations will change and in a disciplined approach.
All right, so Jeff, let's think of these terms. We're dealing with a myriad of issues that clients could be facing. A challenge that some advisors run into is wanting to cover too much or tell too much. Mm-hmm. Coach us a little bit on some ways to mitigate that issue.
Well, when you think about the issues, and there are as many as 13 or in some cases more based upon specific situations, it's important to recognize that it's difficult for the client to even think about the role that each may play. And it's really important that as we have conversations, we give them the ability to grasp a hold of each and how they're important with their overall plan. There are tools that we could use. We may use a tool that simply lists the issues to allow them to actually have something to look at, touch, feel, see, and understand what they are. If we simply said there's this, it's so much information, it's hard to really crystallize the role that it may play. But it doesn't have to necessarily be just a tool that lists the issues. There could be a tablet that has the issues. There could be other ways to actually show them what they are. The most important thing to remember, though, is that it's not about you telling them how smart you are on all these issues and how much you know on all these issues. So in other words, it's not a knowledge dump of this is all the information about this. Instead, it's really focused on how does this impact you, your family, and ultimately play a role in the things that are really important to you.
So it's really about a discovery process then. It's really about meeting the client where they are.
Exactly.
And not so much about all the tools and resources that we have. David, walk us through what advisors should do now.
Phil, it's real simple, and as the advisory team, to be able to position, as Jeff was just saying, whether it's a tool, whether it's a document, whether it's a legal tablet, it's understanding how to present it to the client in the form or fashion that the client is agreeable to. In other words, communicating it to the client to make sure that Phil understands and the advisor team knows that we want to navigate the prioritized issue for them at that point in time. And being able to navigate that, and as I say each and every day, advisors, making the commitment to understand the client's overall situation as best you can. And it's an ever-changing commitment. And today it'll be one thing, tomorrow it'll be something different. But being able to position the document, the tablet, whatever it is that the advisor is using, to be able to navigate the client relationship around their priorities, not our priorities.
So David, let's put words to the symphony if we could right here. Walk us through an example of what a conversation might sound like if you are repositioning with an existing client. This is a relationship that an advisor has done business with perhaps for a number of years, but not as comprehensively as they seek to do in the future. What does that actually sound like?
Phil, that's real simple. If it's an existing client relationship, oftentimes we as advisors, we've had many of these conversations historically, whether it's investments, whether it's rolling over an IRA from a previous employer, whether it's an insurance conversation. We've had a lot of these conversations. As I present the document to the client, I want to make sure that he or she understands that we've been having these conversations for the length of our relationship. It's not new. I never want an advisor to say this is something new. The first thing that's going to come up is, well, I don't want to be the guinea pig to something that is just created. So technically, we've been doing this, advisors, for a long time. So my demonstration to the client is making sure that as we navigate these conversations, that some of them are going to be new, but quite frankly, Phil, we can't have standalone conversations. I cannot just have the investment conversation. I cannot just have the titling conversation. I have to make sure that the investment conversation goes along with 4 or 5 other conversations that Jeff introduced a few minutes ago. So the conversation to the client as I place the document down or as I put the legal pad down is all about these are all together, and we cannot have standalone conversations. So to the client, they will ultimately see that as we're having the investment conversation, we have to have the power of attorney conversation. We have to have the trust and the estate planning discussion to make sure when something ultimately happens with the client that we know what to do with these assets. So the advisors being able to continue to introduce and reposition what it is that maybe they've been doing for a long time that they will continue to do for a long time with the client and their family.
So a person's financial life is a lot like their biological or health life. Everything really is interrelated, and to examine one part in its own right without taking into consideration everything else, that's the equivalent of malpractice.
Correct.